Hello everybody, this is Graeme Anderson, and today I'm going to be looking at Merlin's Beast Hunt. Now when I first saw this box, I thought, man, this looks like some action-filled game about wizards fighting back hordes of mythical creatures. Cool, that sounds like I'm going to have a lot of fun. But then I kind of read the back of the box, and it seemed more like we were battling to put up fences to capture the mythical creatures. Okay, maybe not what the front of the box seems to say, but, you know, it could still be fun nonetheless. And then when I opened up the box, it did have some cool components. I mean, you've got some kind of see-through cards here. And you're going to be erecting a load of these fences by using dice. Now this game actually ended up being kind of an abstract strategy game. We're going to be rolling dice and using those dice to erect the matching walls. And then bringing or moving the mythical creatures on the board to hopefully enclosure them, or capture them I should say, to score points. So, will this game be able to capture my imagination and win me over? Or will it be quickly forgotten and banished? Let's get it to the table, see how it's played, and we'll come back for my final thoughts on Merlin's Beast Hunt. I've set up Merlin's Beast Hunt for 2 players. Each player will be given dice of their color based on the player count. They will also get a set of transparent walls in their color, which are shuffled, and 4 draw face up in front of the player. The goal of the game is to collect the most points. You'll get points from erecting fences and for capturing beasts within those fences. Play will continue until either one player has used up all of their dice, or all the holes on the board are filled with dice and all the grid lines have a fence. On a player's turn, they will first roll 4 dice. You can re-roll your dice, but you must keep at least 1 die per roll. Now there are 4 sides to the dice, which match the different types of fences. Water, thorns, lightning, and bamboo. One of the faces is the beast face, which we'll talk about in a bit. The last face is a wild face and can be used as any of the other 5 faces. So once you've finished rolling, you'll place 0 to 4 dice out and 0 to 4 cards out, and potentially place or move some beasts. To place dice out, take 0 to 4 dice from your active pool, and they can only be placed in holes on the board. Once a die of a single face is in a hole, all the other dice that are added to the same hole must either be the same face or a wild. A wild die can only be placed in a hole where there is already a non-wild die, and only 1 wild die can be placed per turn no matter what you're using it for. When adding dice, they must form a continuous network of existing dice and cards. Dice must be placed in a hole that already has dice or is reached by an already placed fence. Once placed, dice cannot be moved or changed on subsequent turns. To place a card, take one of the cards that are face up in front of you, and remember that cards can only be placed along their long edge and must be supported by at least 1 pair of dice at one end. This is now called a fence once it's been placed. The fence's image must match the icons on a pair of dice at one end or the other. If a card is placed that does not match dice at one end, the hole at the opposite side must be able to contain dice of the matching fence type. Fences can only be added to extend the network of already played fences and dice. Once your turn is over, these fences cannot be moved. If you roll a beast side, you can either add a new beast to the board, and it's up to you which beast you choose, and all beasts come in from the board either in an empty corner or an empty edge space. If there's already beasts on the board, you can use your beast die to move an already placed beast by moving it to an adjacent non-diagonal square. Only 1 beast can be in a square at a time, they cannot move through a fence, and they cannot be added to an already enclosed square. Once you've finished placing your dice, fences, and used up your beast die, you will check for newly completed fences and enclosure. A fence is completed if it's supported by 2 dice on either end, making 4 dice. Fences will always score 2 points for the owner of the fence. They will then get bonuses for how many of their dice are used. One important note about fences, and that's about how to create a reinforced fence. If all 4 dice supporting the fence match the fence type or are wild, the fence is said to be reinforced. This will get the fence extra points and can be used to trap some beasts. Depending on how many points you score for the fence, and there's a little summary chart here, you're going to take victory point chits for the completed fences. Once the new fences have scored, you check to see if a beast is now enclosed and captured. A beast is enclosed if they are surrounded completely by fences, or by fences in the edge of the board. The player who places last completed fence or last die to finish off the enclosure will have the opportunity to capture the beast. If you meet the requirements for the beast, and each beast has different requirements, for example, the center must be enclosed by at least 1 reinforced fence, then the current player will capture the beast and put it in front of them to be counted at the end of the game. Once all the new fences have been scored and beasts captured, the active player can discard none, some, or all of their cards and draw back up to 4. They then refill their dice pool back up to 4, including any dice that were not placed on the board in the previous round. If they still have dice left, but less than 4 of their own dice, they will add black neutral dice to make sure that they're always rolling 4 dice. And again, the game will end when either one player has no dice left of their color, or all the holes on the board are filled with a maximum number of dice and all grid lines have a fence on them. We then go to scoring. You add up all the VP you scored from the completed fences during the game, then you add the beasts. Unicorns are 5 points, Centaurs 7, Chimeras 8, and Basilisks are 10. And the player with the most points is the winner. Now let's get back to see what I thought about Merlin's Beast Hunt. So, theme and components. The theme is, well, pretty much non-existent in the game. But as this does have an abstract strategy feel to it, I'm not going to complain too much. I will give them credit for trying, and they did try and keep the theme going through the components, but that's kind of where it ends. So, let's go on to the components. Now, this is kind of a mixed bag. The main board itself is pretty boring, as you saw. It's functional, but boring. The dice themselves, you know what? These are kind of really nice dice, and you have plenty of dice up to 4 players. I thought the standee art was nice. In the overview, I kind of showed them on the side, but they do have little plastic stands that you can stand them up vertically. The cards, now this is kind of where I had a little bit of an issue. I understand what they wanted to do, and they are cool looking. But due to the reflections, whenever I play this, I would see the reflection of the die on this side of the card as the die that was on this side of the card. And it made it difficult to see. Now, I don't know how you can fix it. I don't know whether regular cards where you couldn't see it either, maybe shorter cards? I'm not sure. But it was sometimes annoying that the die I thought was there wasn't. The victory point chits are okay. I do wish there was a bit more difference between the 2s and 3s, maybe different colors at least. So for me, the components were a mixed bag, hit and miss. On to the gameplay. The main concept of the game sounds like it will be a good idea. And it does kind of work, but it does leave it somewhat lacking. This feels like it should be an abstract strategy game, but there's just kind of too much randomness to be that deep. You have a random set of cards in front of you, then you get to roll 4 dice. Now you do get to re-roll some dice, but you have to keep 1 die each round, so that re-rolls are going to be limited. And then you kind of see whether you can place anything. I should be looking at what my opponent has to see whether I can try and set it up so I can capture a beast next turn. But if I don't roll what I need, or I don't have the fences, then kind of there goes that strategy. Now don't get me wrong, there is some thought to be made and some decisions. Maybe sometimes you won't put out a dice because you can see that it maybe leaves it open for your opponent to kind of quickly get in and get a beast, again, if they get the right roll. But sometimes it ends up being just a waiting game. If the enclosure requires 2 more walls and 4 dice to complete, are you going to be the one to put up 2 dice on a wall to make it much easier for your opponents? Probably not. But someone has to pull the trigger at some point. Now, hopefully it's going to be you when you roll the 4 perfect dice and have the 2 perfect walls in front of you that you can, finish off the enclosure and capture a beast. Assuming that there's a beast in there because you've probably used up all your dice to do all the walls. I think that there is a way to slightly minimize the randomness. I might appreciate the game more. I like the dice rolling piece. So maybe having all your walls available at the start, because you only have 4 of each. So maybe that might give me the opportunities to be more strategic. I see that you only have 1 water fence left. Is there some way I can use that to my advantage? The way it is, it becomes less of a deciding factor for me. You can discard your cards and draw back up to 4. And being able to see the top card of your draw pile, because they're, see-through, did help me plan a little bit. If I saw that I may need a thorn fence, I could see whether there's one on the top of my deck and whether I want to discard to kind of draw back up. Again, but there's no guarantee I'm going to be able to place it. I also prefer that the game, at most, at 2 players. At that player count, I seem to have the most control over what I put out, and kind of where my long-term strategy was going to be. I found at the higher player counts, it was more of just kind of waiting to see what happens on my turn so I could see the state of the board. I couldn't really plan anything going forward as there was even more randomness from the more players. So 2 players for me was probably the best player count because I was looking for a more strategic game. Now, it sounds like I'm being overly negative, but I actually kind of enjoyed my plays of the game, but always came away wishing I had a little more control over the outcome. I don't feel I ever won or lost because of my great strategy. It was more of just kind of getting lucky with a combination of die rolls and cards ahead in front of me, and the game is kind of too long to just rely on that randomness. The game feels like it's almost there. There is a good idea in the box, and maybe the game just needed a little more development to help it be a little more strategic and less random. It's the same with those fence cards. It's a good idea, but it just needed a little more work to make it fully work. So, would I recommend this game? I think ultimately I'm going to have to come down on the no side. I did enjoy my plays, and I kind of enjoyed the main mechanism. I like some of the components, and even the components I didn't like, I understand what they were going through, like the see-through walls. I liked the idea of the game and wanted to like the game more than I did. But I do think the game never quite comes together. I wanted it to be more strategic. I wanted to be able to plan further out than just my current role. And it also made the game feel too long, and that makes the game feel less tense, less engaging, and ultimately less enjoyable. I'm going to have to give this game a 5.5 out of 10. I think the game would have benefited from a little more development to focus in on what it wanted to be, on the main ideas, because those main ideas are just too rough around the edges, which unfortunately means that the game is, I think, going to soon be forgotten. But that's it for the moment. Until next time, thanks for watching.